Hello, everyone. A very good morning. Warm welcome to MPark's first Wildlife Encounters webinar. Thank you for joining us on Zoom as well as YouTube. My name is Serena and I'll be your host for this morning. Our efforts to enhance our natural spaces have brought people closer to nature and wildlife. This will be the first of a series of webinars where we'll be covering the different wildlife species commonly encountered, as well as the science-based approach in understanding their ecology and distribution, as we promote responsible and positive human-wildlife coexistence. Well, today's webinar is on the theme of human-wildlife encounters in Singapore in our city in nature. We will be joined by Dr. Adrian Liu and Mr. Hao Chun Beng. Sorry, I just had a little bit of a technical difficulty there. Okay, so where was I? Dr. Adrian Liu and Mr. Hao Chun Beng from MPark's Wildlife Management team. Both speakers are actively involved in the management of human-wildlife encounters here, and they are deeply passionate about today's topic. This morning, they will share more about an overview of human-wildlife encounters in Singapore, different aspects of our work involved in managing these encounters, from wildlife outreach and education to the research that is being done. And after we are done with their dialogue, there will be a short Q&A session. If you have any questions along the way, do send them to Nicholas Chuan as a private message using the Zoom chat, and we'll try to share some of these during the Q&A session. I hope you are as excited as I am to hear from our speakers. So without further ado, Dr. Adrian Liu and Chun Beng, please.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this wet morning. So this is a series of 8 webinars that we are having to really reach out to people and spread awareness about human-wildlife encounters and also talk about city in nature as well. So thank you for joining us. I hope you have a nice cup of coffee and then enjoy this seminar. Next slide, please. So I don't have to remind you all that Singapore has a very high rainfall, as you can see. And of course, after the rainfall, there'll be the sun as well. We're in the tropics. And hence, we have a rich diversity of flora and fauna. And where we are situated also is quite interesting in the tropics because we are at the crossroads of, especially for bird life, they actually do come from the East Asian Australasian flyway. Next slide. So we are a small city state, and we don't really have the kind of forest you see in the outskirts of Singapore. We are actually all our core areas are in the middle of Singapore and at the sides also. So we do have these core areas, and envelope around these core areas are our housing and I don't think I have to really explain how densely populated we are. But interestingly also, despite being so densely populated with humans, Singapore is really a very biodiverse country. Yeah. Next slide. So this is really thanks to almost 60 to 70 years of really a vision of a garden city that really evolved into a city in a garden. So in 1963, when then Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew planted the first pink mempat tree, he launched the greening of Singapore, and there was intensified planting, and really Singapore became more verdant, more green, and very welcoming to and livable. So that was really a foresight that we really benefited from. So as we went from garden city, we transformed into a city in a garden where we talked about biophilia as well, biophilic design. And we were realizing that, we need to envelope the city with nature as well. And we slowly could enjoy things like, butterflies and birds coming and being in our midst as well. Next slide. So now the next iteration of this vision is city in nature. As you can see from the picture before that, really we are really living very close with nature, and what actually is this new paradigm about? is really about applying nature-based solutions to combat climate resilience, to improve connectivity from one core area to another for ecological resilience. Now, with improved connectivity, such as the rail corridor, our park connectors, and our nature ways, certain fauna can actually go from one core area to another, and that means that you have dispersal of populations. So rather than have one population stuck in one core area, they can move about, form new subpopulations, and if something happens to one population due to disease or anything else, you have another few populations to fall back on. So that is really ecological resilience. We have a 1 million tree movement, and this movement is really about planting native trees and extending our natural capital with the help of the community. So I can see that maybe in the participant list here, some of you actually have participated or actually contributed as some of the leads, in doing this community planting, and that's been really very important. You guys are down for these trees that you all lead. I can see that there's a lot of interaction. There's a lot of exchange about about native species, about how important this combating climate change to planting trees is, and all that. So that in effect really increases the social resilience. Yeah. So this is really what City in Nature is about in a nutshell, because we realize as humans that we depend on nature, for our survival. So that's City in Nature. Next slide. So one of the key strategies in City in Nature is really extending our nature park network. We have some nature parks that are very popular right now. Thomson Nature Park, Windsor Nature Park, all these actually was slated for development, but we realized that through our surveys, ecological surveys and scientific surveys and all that, that these are very important areas to conserve. Things like Thomson Nature Park, they are home to the Raffles banded langur, they are home to the pangolins, they are home to the porcupines, Malayan porcupines. Surprisingly, we do have porcupines, and so we do then conserve these areas as nature parks. They're usually abut the core areas. So instead of developing this, which would lead to the edge effect, these are conserved. We also go through this thing called habitat enhancement, where we intensify nature in our gardens and parks. So a very simple example would be in Bishan Park, you would have a butterfly garden that's planted by native plants that actually attracts native butterflies. And butterflies are very important pollinators. What they carry is pollen from a tree to another tree, and this actually spreads the genes and diversifies the genes of these plants, and that results in ecological resilience as well. We also restore nature into the built environment. A good example of this actually is Jurong Island, an industrial estate. So from our ecological modeling and climate modeling, we can see that if we do plant extensively along certain areas in industrial estates, the temperatures of these areas, right, will actually decrease by about 3 to 4 degrees Celsius. So that's one idea about restoring nature into the built environment. Of course, as mentioned about strengthening connectivity between our green spaces, and this is very important for the ecological resilience of fauna. Of course, this cannot be done just by ourselves. Everyone has a role to play. So we do invite you to join our 1 million trees movement as well. You can sign up in Trees SG. We are most happy to welcome you into this role. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about some of the really interesting examples. But before we go to that, Singapore has a very biodiverse. We are a very biodiverse country, basically. With a recorded 2,000 over native plant species. We have amazing biodiverse range of hard corals as well. And we also are, because of our position in the tropics, also we have a lot of mangrove tree species as well. So this is just this is a snapshot of the biodiversity that we see And in Singapore also, we continue to, discover interesting things. At the left-hand corner there, you see a Neptune cup, and it was rediscovered after 90 years. So there's a lot of surprises that a small country like Singapore actually, picks up. So for plant species also, in the last decade, we actually rediscovered about 200 species of plants that were either thought to be extinct, or some of them were thought never to occur in Singapore. So there's still a lot to do with regards to biodiversity. Yeah. Next. So I talked about connectivity, and I think you all know that when you drive through the DKE, you see this EcoLink. It is much more, the trees have grown up there. And we do regular surveys, and we see things like silver cats, we see things like pangolins, we see things like the slow lorries actually using this EcoLink, and they travel from the Bukit Timah area to the Central Catchment Nature Reserve. So this is a great initiative to make sure that the gene flow and the animals still have a safe passage, from one patch of forest to another. So, and we are trying to improve on that as well. So the next slide will show you. This is a prototype of a rope bridge, that we constructed about 3 years ago. And this was done over the water. And it was just to test whether animals would use it. And of course, the really wily macaque was able to use it along with other squirrels and all that. But we've since improved on this design. And you see the next slide. Yeah, this is a very interesting thing. This is, if most of you would know this, this is the Raffles banded langur, and it's crossing over to Thomson Nature Park. It used to have to cross on the road or depend on certain canopy connections. But this, we redesigned the rope bridge to make it into a wider one, and we fix cameras on either side of it, and and to see whether it is useful for the Raffles banded langur. We've worked with organizations like the Jane Goodall Institute and Dr. Andy Ang as well to position these rope bridges where we knew this Raffles banded langur was crossing. So this was really exciting to see as well. And mind you, this Raffles banded langur, when I was about 20 years old, so that was many years ago, there was like, we thought that there were only 5 to 10 left. But today, we see about 50 to 60, thanks to the work of our citizen science participants, as well as Dr. Andy Ang and our own researchers as well. So we've actually counted about 50 to 60. So that's why it's very important that we conserve some of these nature parks that are very biodiverse, rich in biodiversity of plants, and as well as based on ecological survey, abutting nature reserves. So this was very important for us to conserve as well. They love rambutans, so yeah, they are going probably to Thomson Nature Park to eat rambutans. Yeah. Next slide. So sorry, backwards. This is a family of Malayan porcupines. Interestingly, this is a culvert. That means it's like basically a drain underneath the road. And we also have camera traps there. And we, until today, we do study this. So there's a yearly survey that we do. And these culverts not only encourage terrestrial mammals like the porcupines, but pangolins and other animals like mouse deer as well to cross safely. We do maintain these culverts and making sure that it's clear of obstruction as well. Next slide. And just to show you another very rare mammal, this is a leopard cat. It is thanks to people who study it, like Marcus Chua, who's in the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum also, and also researchers who do these style surveys. We find that there is a healthy population, and we constantly do studies and try to actually detect these animals and make sure that we have a hold on their numbers as well. So this is it's not a very large cat. So it's one of the top predators in Singapore, but it eats small mammals and probably fish as well. And yeah, so it's about the size of a large cat. Yeah, large domestic cat. This is a lesser mouse deer. Interestingly, this is getting easier to detect in the forest. So if you are quiet and if you go to our nature reserves or nature parks, right, and if you are keen enough and mindful enough, you will see this very beautiful kancil, you know. It's really amazing for those of you who are a bit older like me. You will realize that there were a lot of folklore about the kancil and buaya, and this really embedded the our native fauna into our minds, so hopefully this will inspire story writers to actually talk about this kind of old folklore again, so that our younger ones can understand the importance of conserving these animals as well. Next slide. This is a larger deer. This is the samba deer, not the sambal deer. It's a samba deer. We do have it inside our nature reserves as well. So these all are camera trap videos. You can see really very beautiful, healthy looking deers in our forest. Yeah. Next slide. We also use technology such as night vision goggles to make sure that when we observe these animals, right, we are doing it without altering their behavior. So we keep a distance. We are usually about downwind from these animals, and then we observe them. So this is actually a group of females. So the males usually during breeding season will have a harem of female deers. Yeah. Next. So so the question is, right, with such a biodiversity, I've showed you examples of very different kinds of animals, but oftentimes we only see in the news or in social media, right, things like wild boars and macaques. So just so can we actually live, can we coexist? How do we coexist? And I think the series of webinars if you join us in this journey of these webinars, right, you will learn about interactions with otters, interaction with snakes, civet cats, and what they're about, and maybe a stronger appreciation and knowledge about their ecology and their behavior will enable us to coexist better. Like, for example, a very simple fact that observe these animals from a distance. Don't interact with them, don't feed them, especially. I remember my cat was very hungry, and then it was Christmas, and I had a bit of leftover on my plate, and I fed my cat, and then that's it. Every time I ate, it jumped on my plate. Yeah. So, and that took about 2 months to undo. And my wife didn't want to help me also. So yeah. So animals have a very strong survival instinct. So don't feed them. Next slide, please. Yeah. More and more, especially during this time of COVID, a lot of people are escaping into the nature reserves and nature areas, and what's happening is that we are also trying to keep our parks open, and we've kept our parks open since a year ago when COVID happened, during the circuit breaker. So during circuit breaker, people could come. And because people are so having cabin fever in Singapore, they find that flocking into our nature reserves is like a source of refuge, and they derive a lot of enjoyment from that. So so of course, this might also result in really more encounters. I've seen people who are first-time visitors to Bukit Timah Nature Reserve or first-time visitors to the Central Catchment Nature Reserve, and sometimes they bring a bubble tea and they're drinking, along the trails. So if you are a seasoned hiker, right, you wouldn't even be doing that. And then what happens is that the monkey then, I've seen monkeys actually drinking bubble tea. And we have to keep on telling the new hikers that please don't bring and don't carry your plastic bag around. Please don't bring any cooked food around, because the macaques can smell it or the wild boars can smell it. So this also can increase the interaction between human and wildlife. Next slide. Okay, so these are just a range of issues that we see. We get about interestingly, we get a few thousand calls a month on animal issues, and our staff, along with our trained contractors, have to deal with this. So it's a 24/7 job, and amongst our staff, we get to hold the ops phone. So the person who gets to hold the ops phone for a week, usually has a very tough week. So anyway, so these are this on the top left, you see a reticulated python. This is a very interesting snake. It's native to Singapore. So when we train our wildlife contractors to handle this, they are trained to handle this with care and ensure that they have welfare for these animals that are native to Singapore. As an animal like the reticulated python has an ecosystem function, and I think most of you would know that it actually feeds on rats, in our sewage system. So it helps to really balance. It brings about an ecological balance. So a lot of animals do that, and that's why it's very important not to upset that balance through feeding as well. So yeah, and monkeys are very curious. So um, especially if they see food, they will actually go for that. And they hang around in troops. So there are ways to actually uh, ensure that the interaction with them is safe. Keep a distance away from them. Don't taunt the alpha male. When he's yawning, actually he's baring his teeth. Of course, it's quite hard to understand those, but that's what we are trying to do in this series of seminars. If there's a long-tailed cat seminar coming on as well. So don't stare at the alpha male in the eye. Just walk along. Make sure you don't have a plastic bag. And then they're actually quite nice to observe. How they pick up the kutu from each other's bags and all that. So they do preen each other. Very nice social unit. Then of course the more dramatic ones are the crocodile that's cited here. Mr. Howe is our crocodile Dundee, and he's usually called upon when there's a very tough crocodile case. And rest assured, we also treat these crocodiles with care as well. And but at the top of our minds are also is also public safety as well. Another kind of wildlife conflict is also our pigeons and miners. We get over 1,500 calls a month on bird nuisance. So we have to deal with that. And how do we deal with that? We'll tell you more about this. And it's more a science-based and holistic approach in dealing with this. Yeah. Then of course there's the red jungle fowl. Some people love them, some people hate them. So yeah. And what we do is we also have a lot of signages around parks. I think Singaporeans, being very law-abiding citizens, they also like to be kept informed of what they can do and not do in the park. So every time we have a particular area where there is a human-wildlife conflict, we quickly go down and put some signages up. We do have volunteers and stakeholders that work with us, like the Long-Tailed Macaque Working Group or the Otter Working Group. They're an amazing bunch of people that sacrifice their time and go down because of their love for the particular animal. They actually go down and even educate the public, telling people like, hey, don't please keep your distance, please leash your dog. The otter doesn't need frozen fish, so don't feed them, and this actually helps in mitigating the human-wildlife conflict just by basic understanding on how to behave in a situation where an animal is quite nearby. Everybody gets excited. Don't go and try to take a selfie with the animal, for example. Yeah. Next slide. Yeah, so there are also dramatic cases of animal accidents as well, and this not only injures the animals, it also injures the motorcyclist or the driver as well. So we have embarked on we have signs along all these roads that are hotspots. We've also put rope bridges, and we've also tested out this system that Mr. Howe will elaborate on later. Slide. So on the 1st of April in 2019, we became the lead agency for all related animal matters. And this was a merger between the veterinary side of AVA, the then AVA, and with our conservation team. So this was a very good collaboration. In fact, a good merger, because it brought together a conservation approach as well as an animal welfare approach. Because right now we have the veterinary insight as well. And basically our aim is to really make sure that we mitigate the kind of human-animal interactions, make it from negative to positive as much as we can through a science-based and welfare approach. And also heighten public awareness about regarding urban wildlife. After all, we really live in wild Singapore, right? We do have a 24 animal response center, but of course, in emergency cases, just call the police. Yeah. Next slide. So there are legislation under NParks, and you can see in totality, right? All these acts actually come together, right, to conserve our flora and fauna, and not only that, right, also look at the welfare of the animals, and the welfare really is enshrined in the Animal and Birds Act. The Parks and Trees Act actually protect our nature reserves. Control of Plants Act, control the plants that come in as well. And Wildlife Act, we control, we enforce against poaching, we enforce against the release of animals and capture of animals as well. So this is really highly regulated, and the Wildlife Act was amended from the previous Wild Animal and Birds Act. So the new legislation really is quite interesting. It addresses a lot of the questions that people had posed before about can we stop people from releasing wildlife? Can we increase the penalties against poaching? So the Wildlife Act actually addressed those. Of course, we have the Endangered Species Act as well, and we enforce against people who are trading in the illegal wildlife trade. So this is very important as well. So we not only protect our animals locally, also we do it on a global scale. If you know about it, in 2019 we had very large scale enforcement against the illegal trade of elephant tusks that were coming through. So we really stopped and dampened, that kind of activity as well. And we received a UN prize for that as well, in collaboration with China and Interpol. Yeah. Okay, next slide, please. So our approach to wildlife management is really a science-based approach. And it's not only science-based approach, it's twinned with an ethically acceptable approach as well. We look into the population ecology of the animals that we manage. We look at various tools of population management, which is holistic. We really focus on public education, for example, these webinars, and also community stewardship. And the community stewardship is really embodied in animal working groups like the otter working group, the cat working group, and the civet cat working group. There are so many interested parties. There are so many people who are experts, in this field, and we leverage on that. We don't do these things alone, and we do it we work even with people who are laymen, but who have a very strong interest in protecting certain species as well. Next slide. So just an example, you can see that we use sensors for biodiversity management. We look at models as well on how animals move, and we do very regular surveys on population estimation as well. We want to know where these animals are distributed, what is actually influencing or affecting their distribution in the wild or urban areas. You see here a macaque, it has a collar, it's a radio collar. These days we also use a satellite collar, a GPS collar. And we track the movement of troops. This is the alpha male, so the rest of the troop usually follows the alpha male. And then we can understand where is this troop moving? Why is it moving in a particular way? Why is it moving into a residential area? Is there another troop nearby that will actually stop it? So these are the questions that can be addressed through a science-based approach. So this collar drops off after our survey. So don't worry. It's actually, when we put it on, a vet is on hand. A vet is on hand to actually make sure that we put it on properly as well. But it drops off through a remote control. So the animal is well taken care of. Next slide. So as I showed you, there are sensors that we use. Video camera traps are really an amazing tool. You can actually put it there. We do a grid system in the Central Catchment Nature Reserve of 50 over camera traps, studying the movement of animals like the samba deer, the wild boar, and we've captured images and videos of things like the lesser mouse deer and pangolins as well. And this really strongly informs us about how these animals are moving, whether their population is growing too fast or too slow, that kind of things. Yeah, and it's a conservation tool as well. Yeah, next slide. We just an example. This was one of the shortest paper that we or it really took us a short while to get this paper out in a very prestigious scientific journal. So it's biological conservation during the circuit breaker. We were very interested to see how food would affect, how human waste would affect the distribution of pigeons near food centers. So during the circuit breaker, the food centers were not allowed to have people sit and eat their food. So they were allowed only to give takeaways, sell takeaways. So we realized that during that 1.5 months, what happened was the very quickly, right, the pigeon populations and myna and the crow population actually changed, especially the pigeons. What happens was usually they would flock in 15 to 20 individuals in a flock. They would come and they would sit on the tables of hawkers, of the tables, right? It'd be quite annoying to a lot of people because there is, of course, that hygiene issue. But once circuit breaker came in, right, the pigeon flock reduced down to 1 to about 3, and they were feeding on natural food. They were feeding on the grass verge. They were actually picking on seeds, from the grass, and they also took a longer time. And we look at their energy budget. They took a longer time feeding, which means that they are not full and they have to spend a longer time feeding. They spend a lesser time resting and mating. So we realized that mating also was reduced. This actually helps to shift that population into a more manageable population. So we are working with NEA, SFA to make sure that that rubbish is disposed of well. Yeah, so that's one of the studies that we published. Yeah, next slide. So right now I'll just hand this over to Mr. Hao. We'll go through some examples with you and some of the public education we do.
Okay, thanks, Adrian. So hi morning everybody, I'm Chun Beng, and for the next 10 minutes or so, I'll just take you through the remaining slides. Just before he left, Adrian was talking about population ecology, understanding the animals, right? So another way where we can actually mitigate conflict is actually through habitat modification. Before you see this slide where it shows a certain part of Singapore, which we should not say where. It used to be all palm plantation, so there are a lot of leftover trees, and then there's some colors there, and that actually notes how much activity centers, how high activity there are in terms of wild pigs. So very, very red means a lot of wild pigs, and it correlates to the presence of oil palm. It's not really rocket science. Essentially, if you think about it, in the place where you live, right? Where do you get the most people? It's a hawker center, right? So this is a hawker center effect, essentially. So a lot of oil palm, a lot of food means a lot of pigs. And if we reduce the oil palm, remove them, then we get less pig. So that is the essence of one of the essences of habitat modification. Now the next slide, right? So the scientists, they really have to work very hard to prove something that they think is suspect to be correct. So there's this site in our neighboring country, which we shall also not name. Okay, what is this about? This shows that an oil palm, if you look at the green patch there, oil palm next to a primary forest, right? So this last bit of primary forest surrounded by oil palm. And the scientists were there for a really long time, 1984 to 2016. They were encamped there, watching how the presence of pigs correlated with the presence of oil palm. So oil palms, they go through this cycle, 25 years. And after they have to cut down all the oil palms. And if you look at the graph, right, when there was oil palm present, high numbers of pigs, right? And then when they remove all the oil palms, the pigs practically disappeared. And when oil palms were replanted, so pigs all came back. And there's another effect from the presence of pigs. in the primary forest. If you look at the forest, right, they actually had a section where they cordon it off and close it so that pigs could not get in. Now that section, it had more abundant vegetation because it was not damaged by the pig. But the rest that were open to pig, there was a lot of damage. But closer to home, we also create our own mini hawker centers when we do not dispose of our rubbish properly. You look at these places. If you're living in an area which is next to a monkey habitat, then we actually need to adapt to how we dispose of rubbish. So simple measures like putting your waste into the bins instead of putting them outside, or securing it with a bungee cord, it goes a long way towards making the whole situation more acceptable. In Australia, in Northern Territories, right, they have this slogan, "Be crop-wise." Why? Because there are a lot of crocodiles in their waterways. So the people there are educated about how to be smart, because there might be crocodiles in the river. Sometimes with floods, they can come up to your drains. So be crop-wise, but you don't get that slogan in Perth and other parts of Australia. Why? Because there are no crops. So similarly, if we are going to live in an area that's going to be next to a nature area, there are monkeys, for example, then we need to be a bit more monkey-wise, right? If you are going to be living in an area where there's known to be snakes, then be snake-wise. The premise is the same. Just be street smart, adapt to the area where you have chosen to live in, accept the wildlife that's going to be your neighbors. Well, it's not just about reducing the presence of certain animals. Our work, we also want to increase the numbers of other animals, such as pangolins, for example, and we work with a lot of partners, organizations to do this. This particular animal, I think, was probably a lost fellow who was wandering around Jurong West. So these animals like this need to be picked up and rescued. Now, pangolins are the sweetest, just the sweetest animals, you see them. And it's very tempting to actually pick it up and then take selfies with it. Now, this is something I'll mention again later. Just don't do these things, because while you find a pangolin cute, it might not be true, vice versa. So leave them alone. But while it's good to rescue animals, it's even better to prevent them from falling in situations where they need to be rescued, right? So we actually came up with this this early warning system for large animals that might cross the road. So we call it RADS. It's actually done in other countries as well, where they have implemented it to avoid motorists hitting animals like deers, large mammals. So you see in the pictures below, you have there's a wild sambar deer that was actually knocked down by a vehicle. It eventually had to be put down. And then there's another picture that shows that the headliner is not so appropriate. It's this fully shoot wild boar that was rampaging in Bongo. Sarina put that down, so I think we'll quickly go to the next slide. Okay, so what have we got? RADS along Old Upper Thomson Road. It's already done, really implemented. So this system actually has a CCTV, which uses AI to detect a large animal crossing the road, a large presence on the road. And then it sends a flashing light early on, so that cars that are oncoming, they can actually be warned to slow down. This was trialed a lot. In the early trials, we sent out a colleague that we didn't really like, and then he had to go past the road a few times. And then subsequently, when we refined it and it worked better, then we sent out a colleague that we like more, like Serena. And it proved it worked. If you see up there the two images, you see the black and white, see the animal that's about to cross the road. It was detected, and then lights flash, and then you see that taxi there, it actually slowed down. And it says very clearly that brakes applied. And we like to thank our partners at LTA for actually working with us on this. But another key thing that we think is very important is actually working with the community and actually educating the community. And we can't do this without people from all walks of life coming together, volunteering to put hand in hand and do this together. We have many working groups in Singapore, like the otter working group. And then you have also a pangolin working group and a long-tail macaque working group. and there's also reptile. All the groups have got their very cute icons. I think the reptile working group, we need to get our act together and come up with a cute icon. And they haven't got the logo yet. So I mean, if any of you out there is willing to hands up and then help to contribute a cute logo, we're very happy to accept it. Serena is also the reptile working group secretary, and I think she has difficulty getting the snake to look cute, so that's why she put a photo of a python instead. But one of the things that we want to talk about, this is an example here, 6 steps to responsible wildlife interaction. 6 steps, actually, it's not consecutive, but you must do it all together. So 6 steps simultaneously to responsible wildlife interaction. I think we can go through some of them. Number 1, observe wildlife from a safe distance and respect their space, right? This one goes without saying. This is the original safe distancing. Observe wildlife from a safe distance. Respect their safe space. So there's a tendency for people when you see something cute, then you rush forward, you want to take a photo of it, you practically push your camera into their face, right? Now don't do that. If you see something like it's not so cute, maybe a bit ugly to you, like a monitor lizard, then you all like scream and walk away. That's being superficial. So be fair to the animals. Keep an equal distance from all of them. Okay. Second one, keep food and plastic bags outside. Right. That is part of what I was saying earlier about being street smart. So now we're talking about trail smart, park smart, forest smart. If you're going to go to the forest, please, and there are monkeys around, just be alert and then keep your food away from their view. Right. Put in your bags. Like in my office, I sit next to a colleague. I mean, we won't give name, but maybe her name might sound like Wenna Ong. Right? She keeps all her coffee and chocolate hidden in her cupboard, away from my view, right? If she can do that, I'm sure if you go to the forest, you can do better than keep your plastic bags outside for monkeys. Third one, do not feed wildlife. There is sufficient food. We cannot emphasize this enough. There is food for the wildlife, and MParks planted a lot of trees. We enrich our forests. You don't need to go and feed them, right? By basic instinct, the animals respect us. They keep away from us. So don't become a two-legged vending machine to them and make them lose their respect for you. Number 4, leave nothing but footprints, take nothing but photographs. I think this one is a bit outdated. Okay. I don't think we should leave footprints even. Just stay on the path and not detour off and leave your footprints everywhere. And take nothing for photographs. So I used to work in Sungai Buloh, and then we've had people who take photographs. But the way the photographs taken, right, I think we need to have some etiquette as well. If you take photographs, please do not, for the sake of getting a better view, break the branches. Please do not move the nest of a bird so that your picture looks better, or fire or flash right into the eyes of the poor nestlings. They get blinded. Next one, observe the opening and closing times. Yeah, exactly. So most of our parks, nature areas are open from 7 to 7. Animals, they're nocturnal animals. There's a night shift. These nocturnal animals come out. They need to do their things. So we need to respect their space and let them be. And the last one is bringing your dogs into nature areas. I mean, your dogs probably enjoy the walk, but I can tell you there's a very high chance that if you bring them there, they might pick up some ticks home with them. So a lot of what we do is talking about feeding, and we keep talking about not feeding the animals, and there's a lot of media coverage as well. We even came up with collaterals like this. Yeah. The first one, say no to feeding wildlife, where we talk about why you shouldn't and why there's no need to feed wildlife, and actually the repercussions of doing so. Then the next center one, we have do not feed the birds, specific for birds. Actually crows, minus pigeons, birds that we see in our estate. Just explain the graphics a bit. So you see the hen they're feeding out those pellets, and those are food pellets, right? The other one where the bird is on aircon, those are not food pellets. Those are food pellets 5 hours later. Okay. Wildlife, the next one, Wildlife Act. So we also have a poster that actually describes, that tells you what the changes in the new Wildlife Act, things that came out and that you should know about. For example, in this poster, it defines what wildlife is and what wildlife is not. We also highlight there are some species that are elite, that if you do anything to them, you're going to incur even more serious offense, right? And feeding, last time it was just no feeding of pigeons. Now you can't feed all wildlife, right? It's a $10,000 fine, can be $10,000 fine. Releasing of exotic animals, right? Releasing of animals actually, it can attract a big fine also. Now, exotic animals, once they go into our ecosystem, it just causes a mess. It destroys our native biodiversity, and sometimes the amount of work needed to rectify that, if even possible, it's just tremendous, right? So do not release any of these exotics. And if you say that you're releasing native biodiversity, then we'll ask you, then we'll charge you below. We charge you $20,000 because you went to trap them. And then you say that, no, I didn't trap them, I bought them from Carousel. Then we'll charge you $10,000 for illegal sale and purchase of wildlife. Then you say you bought it from a pet shop, then we will charge you under pet abandonment. So the story is, don't release any animals, okay? Yeah, so I think Guy mentioned no feeding. So Serena has added some more slides that talk about no feeding. So we can't emphasize enough wildlife, and also wildlife in the park, and also wildlife in our estates. Do not feed them, they don't need your food. The more you feed them, the more trouble it brings for, as the earlier media report said, it's a lose-lose situation. It's not just a couple of old men going out and talking. We also have young people who are stepping up. Look, these young faces up here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 young faces. And they've gone out on their weekends during COVID period with masks on, and then to talk to people about, to try to get their views on, and they've done posts on what actually affects them, what they like about wildlife, what do they don't like, and this will actually help guide us on how we emphasize, what we emphasize on in our outreach effort also. All right, so kudos to these guys for the hard work put in. But it's not all about don't do this, don't do that. I think we want to encourage positive encounters with wildlife. There are a lot of nature groups offering free walks where they bring you through, and then they guide you on what you can see, things that if you go on your own you might not pay attention to, right? So that's a picture of one of a typical guided walk, and there's a note there. This photo was taken during pre-COVID period, emphasis by again by my colleague Serena. But if you choose not to go out with a group because your idea of nature is being alone, there are also DIY walks that you can actually curate from our website. So Guide to Pruner's Trail and all that, you can just print it out and then go it alone. So lastly, I just want to bring up that the Wildlife Act that came on board in 1st of June last year has brought some operational changes. Foremost, or the one that I'm going to talk about is the regulation of the animal management industry. So we have actually come out with a series of courses. Now, in the past, what you had were the poor guys from the pest control being called, activated to handle pythons and all things that they were not trained for to be fair to them, and they got sometimes they got a lot of flack for that. It's not fair to them. So what we felt was that we could actually come out with these courses, and then for companies that really wanted to continue managing wildlife, they could send people to attend this course and get their staff trained, and then to do the work that they need to do in a more professional manner. We have a series of courses that starts on a basic one, and then we have courses that focuses on the different classes of animals. And in the end, what we want to achieve is people who are actually ready to go out and help you with whatever animal issues that you might face, and that you do not have to panic. There are these people who are professional and can actually have the capacity to deal with it. In closing, I think we have come a long way. How we view our life. I think in the past, maybe 2 decades ago, if you see a python, you'll be kill it, right? There'll be calls to kill it. There'll be people bashing it on the head. There'll be calls to convert it into a leather bag or wallet. But now if Now, if you see a python, most of the time it's just, call NParks, call ACRE. Nobody will actually go out and kill the snake. So there's a lot of acceptance. But what we want to see is in future, maybe 2-3 years from now, if anybody is on the street, they see a python, they say, oh, look, a python. Come, son, our boy, come and take a look at the python. And then there's this acceptance, there's no panic. There's this realization that the snake can be harmless, they just won't go on its own way. And probably that's the state that we want to achieve. So that's my conclusion for my part. I just want to say that this is the first in a series of our webinar. They're monthly ones, and the next few ones they will cover other animals such as silver cats, pythons, macaques, and pigs. So if you think it's worth your while, please do join us for the upcoming sessions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian and Chun Bing, for the in-depth talk. All right, can you hear me better now? Once again, thank you, Adrian and Chun Bing, for the in-depth talk about the science-based approach towards wildlife management here in Singapore and how we can work towards human-wildlife coexistence in our city in nature. Well, now it's time for our Q&A session. Thank you to everyone in the audience who submitted questions. We've had quite an overwhelming response, so I apologize in advance if we are not able to cover every single question. Okay, so our first question will be, what are some of the challenges encountered when managing human-wildlife encounters? So I'm going to throw this over to Adrian. Adrian, please.
Yeah, thanks. Try to answer this quickly because there are a lot of questions and we really want to answer them. So the challenges are very myriad, it ranges from some people saying, oh, the otters are, eating up our koi, please get rid of them, to, oh, the otters are so lovely, so there are differing views on it. So I think one of the challenges would be to get people to understand that, the otters are in our midst, they are not overrunning Singapore. Some of these are the same family that are just going from place to place, and their presence is amplified by social media as well. So a lot of it is about awareness. So, and of course, other challenges on the extreme end is that, in the Punggol wild boar case where the wild boar is coming out, then that one, we really had to be on standby. We were on standby for about 2 weeks. We had our staff, vets, and our contractors and the police were on standby also. So this was almost a 24/7 kind of work that we do at that time. So those are kind of challenges, facing the public as well, interacting with them, and of course, dealing with the animal as well. So yeah, just want to stop there. Yeah.
Thanks, Adrian. We'll move on to the next question. Do you think that current measures in mitigating human-wildlife conflicts are effective? So, Chun Bing, would you want to take this question?
Yeah, thanks. I don't think there is, for all situations, there is always one perfect solution. It has to be probably a combination of a few approaches. And I think a lot of these approaches also have to be site-specific, and it's not a dead-end solution, because what works today might not work tomorrow. So it constantly evolves, and it requires a lot of observation, managing the situation dynamically.
Thank you, Chun Bing. Anything to add, Adrian, to this? Okay, so we'll move on. Do we systematically track the remaining wildlife in Singapore the way we do for birds, butterflies, etc.? Adrian, over to you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that is part of our science-based approach also, and you can see that we use camera traps and, GPS trackers as well. And we have a yearly survey of the Central Catchment Nature Reserve, where we track the wildlife. So we do know, where our concentration of wild boars are, and they are closely related to the oil palms, correlated to the oil palm plantations. Ex-oil palm plantation, sorry. And that's where we try to reduce these oil palms, so that the population of the wild boars will also actually reduce naturally. So, it's a holistic approach. Oil palms are, exotic. They are from Africa, and really, they are also considered weeds in Singapore actually, but we do not just get rid of them wholesale because we do know that there are a lot of oil palms, so we have to reduce them slowly because some of the wildlife that we have here depend on them. So what we do is when we remove one oil palm, we plant a native plant in return. So that native plant will then be a food source, for our native wildlife as well. Yeah, so but it doesn't, lead to a growth of the wild boar population. Oil palms are very rich in calories. The wild boars will eat them, and then they have nothing else better to do. They start to mate, so they get very full very fast with oil palms. Yeah. Chun Ming can touch on a very interesting project we have on tracking wildlife as well.
Yeah, in addition to the surveys, the many ones that you mentioned, for example, Sungai Buloh, they actually have been tracking the birds, the migratory birds that visit the site for the past 20 years. And we have one of the longest records in the region. I think we have the longest records in the region. Not only do we just tag them, we are using all sorts of methods such as geolocators, we're using satellite trackers, and our research is being shared with the East Asian Australian Flyway, with the Asian Flyway Network, to actually help to manage the populations of these shorebirds that come to Sungai Buloh, as well as visit many other important sites along the way. So yes, I think we are doing quite a lot in terms of tracking the wildlife that we have.
Thank you, Chun Ming. Okay, on to the next question. With the decrease in habitats for wildlife, what steps are being taken to ensure that wildlife continue to have a safe space within our city? Adrian, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Serena. That's a great question. We are really, as I mentioned before, a very highly populated city-state, and that's why there's always that perceived increase, conflicts that we have. And what's happening is that, for example, we have our, like I mentioned, our nature parks. They are conserved. They were meant to be, slated for development, but actually conserved because of the kind of rich wildlife that we've seen there, and so that this wildlife has a place to feed. Like for example, the Raffles banded langur, the pangolins can go to these nature parks, to feed. There are also steps to ensure, like for example, Mr. Hao was saying, like don't go off trail. And in recent years, when we develop trails in our nature reserves and nature parks, what we do have actually raised boardwalks. So when you raise a boardwalk, right, what happens is that the animal can actually crawl under the snakes and all that. So then you have less encounters with this wildlife. A very fundamental thing is that most of the wildlife that we see are actually nocturnal. So we do close our nature reserves and nature parks at 7 p.m. for a good reason. That is to ensure biphasic use of the forest. So park users can go there in the afternoon, the early morning and afternoon. They can enjoy the nature reserves, have walks without really encountering things like a big samba deer, or really disturbing the mouse deer. Then at night, what happens is that the forest takes over, right? And then this nocturnal wildlife, like the colugo, they can fly about without being disturbed, by flashlights, or the snakes can move around. So these are some of the very fundamental things that we do to keep the kind of biphasic use of the forest to reduce the wildlife conflict as well.
Thank you, Adrian. Next, okay. What can members of public do proactively to help authorities in preventing human-wildlife conflicts? Chun Ming?
I think for a start, you can attend more webinars and then help spread the word. The other thing is to actually be aware of what is good etiquette when you visit these places, or actually what is needed to actually protect the wildlife. And once you're educated on this and you know what to do, then help you spread the word. And it's not just to your neighbors, but also to your immediate family members, also to the students, to people that you meet. I think that will go a long way towards helping that. I think the other thing is to also accept that living wildlife will bring some inconveniences. I think, and that's to get your neighbors to be aware of that. There will be some adjustments needed, right? But that is all part of having nature in our midst, because we can't filter nature. We can't just treat it like a wallpaper and just have it in the background, look beautiful and that. There'll be creepy crawlies. We can't just accept that they'll want butterflies, but we can't have caterpillars crawling around, right? So once we reach a state where everybody is more accepting, I think that will go a long way to preventing human-wildlife conflicts.
Chun Beng, Adrian, you have anything to add on? Okay, so we'll go on to the next question. Culling, especially for wild boars, will be inevitable. What is the most effective and humane way to do so? Adrian, over to you.
I think this is a good question again, important. What we do is really a holistic approach. So when we employ a science-based approach, right, what we've done is look at the distribution of wild boars. As I mentioned earlier, we have a grid system inside our nature reserve, nature parks, to look at the population of wild boars, even macaques and sambar deer, mouse deer even. And what we have seen is that these wild boar concentrations are correlated to the oil palm plantation, ex-oil palm plantations. And as I mentioned before, these actually encourage the growth of the wild boar. So by employing that approach, right, it is a real upstream approach where you actually reduce the food available for the wild boars so that they can spend more time foraging, and then the population numbers will go down, as we understand from a lot of scientific studies elsewhere. The other observation that we have is also that we also do surveys at feeding hotspots, and these hotspots, like for example Lorong Halus, where you see the man coming out in a van, feeding a basket load of bread, to the wild boars, and then these wild boars just love it, lap it up, eating this type of junk food, and then they their population growth just goes crazy, and then it's unmanageable. So that's one of the ways that we try to address the issue upstream. Like for the case of the Punggol wild boar, where we had to put down that wild boar because it was aggressive and public safety was at risk. What we do is that we always have a vet on hand. So there were a few vets actually stationed at Punggol during that operation. So we make sure that the wild boar is euthanized humanely. It is first tranquilized and before it's euthanized. So wild boars, I mean, maybe it's a good time to actually understand a bit more about wild boars. And they are usually very skittish, when you go into the forest, right, and then you see a wild boar, they usually tend to shy away and run back, retreat back into the forest. So we always have this mantra: observe wildlife from a distance, keep wild animals wild, don't feed them. What happens when someone starts to feed them, right? Wild boars tend to get very habituated to humans very fast. So do macaques. So once you start feeding them, they will recognize humans as the source of food. They will expect another human to come with food. So the person feeding the wild boar is actually not doing anyone any favors. It's causing the population to go up, and he's causing the wild boar to be habituated to a human. So the next time someone comes along, the wild boar will approach that human, and then the other person who hasn't been feeding wild boar will wonder what to do, and then the wild boar will actually start to approach you. And actually, that is quite a frightening experience. So if you do see someone feeding, please let us know or tell the person to stop. Yeah. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. How does NParks deal with overpopulation of crows? So for this, I'm going to hand it over to Chun Beng.
Yeah, I think we have to go down to each particular site, see what's the cause of the crow population there. Is it because it's a roost site? Is it because it's a feeding site? And then deal with it accordingly. Essentially, we will first remove the attraction, what's attracting crows there, and then also couple that with trapping.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, what should we do then in the rare event of a wildlife attack? Adrian?
Yeah. And I said this at Punggol as well. If you really see a wild boar that's very aggressive, please call the police. So that is a very direct line, and they will actually come down. So in our experience at Punggol, right, every time that a wild boar was spotted, right, when people called that police, called 999, they are very familiar with that number. The police came down. So what you need to do is make sure that when you spot a wild boar and you think it's aggressive, stay clear, move away, back off, and then go to just hide behind a pillar, or go climb onto steps or something like that, and then call the police. If the wild boar is really charging at you, please run away. Yeah, run away, hide, and then call the police. Yeah. So I mean, these are things that the public safety is always at the top of our mind as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, we have too many questions. I think I'll just read out the last one that we are taking this morning. Is NParks looking into illegal releases of animals such as mid-year sliders in the form of mercy release? Perhaps Chun Beng can take that for us.
Yeah, that has been quite a common practice in the past, and we've been actually reaching out to religious organizations about that. We've shared with them that actually all these practices most of the time do not end well for the animals, and it's actually doing more harm than good for the environment. And the good news is that a lot of the organizations that we approach, they are very accepting of this, and they are aware, and they have actually adjusted their practices so that these releases do not happen.
Thank you, Chun Beng. Wow, that was a whole lot of questions, and we kind of bulldozed through all of them. With that, I would like to thank Dr. Adrian Liew and Mr. Hao Chun Beng again for their very generous sharing, and also a big thank you to our audience on Zoom and on YouTube for joining us this morning. Our next webinar will be in May, and it will be about the fascinating long-tail macaques. Well, do keep a lookout for the sign-up link on our NParks event page. And a million thanks for all of you who are attending this session. Have a great day ahead. See ya.
Bye.